attend or because of gender identity issues. This year, students could have been included in a different gender category during the final voting, although such a change wouldn't be made without first having a conversation that included the students' parents, Larson said. Larson said he and the student council began talking about the change last year as a step that made sense to be more inclusive to all students. It's an important change, he said, but in some ways didn't seem like a big one given Lincoln High's culture. In some ways, it doesn't seem like a big deal at Lincoln High because it's been a part of our culture in terms of being as inclusive as possible in all situations, he said. Lincoln High is the first Lincoln Public School high school to make such a change. But Lincoln High joins a growing number of high schools and colleges across the country, moving to gender-neutral roles for homecoming royalty. Those include the University of Nebraska at Omaha, which last year switched from calling royalty king and queen to calling them royals, a title that could include any combination of men, women, or transgender students. And high schools from Maryland to Oregon have changed their traditions, so both voting and selection is gender neutral, which means 2 boys, 2 girls, or transgender students could be crowned as royalty. Larson said he's not sure if a change in titles away from king and queen will happen, but there may be a conversation about where to go next. I think anytime changes like that happen, I think it's best if it happens slowly, he said. I think this was simple change, but one made so all our students could feel more included in the process.
All right. The Omaha City Council on Tuesday signed off on an agreement that will allow the city to place officers who are hired from other Nebraska departments on a pay scale that reflects their experience. The council voted 7-0 to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Omaha Police Union. There was no discussion. The union had already voted to pass it. The lateral recruit class is the Omaha Police Department's first in a decade. Omaha Police Chief Todd Schmaderer announced the class as one of several changes for the department after Zachary Bearhills died in police custody in June. Schmaderer has said officer inexperience was a factor in the encounter with a mentally ill man who was shot with a taser and punched by officers. Both officers were fired and face criminal charges. According to a letter to the council from Mayor Gene Stothert and Schmaderer, the agreement attempts to balance the need to be fair to the lateral hires and to the existing workforce. It also recognizes that law enforcement experience with other organizations is helpful, but that the work may be different than which they will see with the Omaha Police Department. The hires who are part of the class will go through an abbreviated training academy and shorter field training phase, but will still be subject to the probationary period of employment established in the collective bargaining agreement. They will be paid on a scale commensurate with their experience. The department received 105 applications and will conduct multiple interviews on multiple days until the class is filled. The department is aiming to hire a class of about 20. The candidates are certified officers from a range of agencies throughout the states. There are very strong, qualified candidates with a variety of skill sets, said Deputy Police Chief Greg Gonzalez. Omaha Police Sergeant John Wells, head of the police union, called the agreement a no-brainer. It gives us the ability to hire experienced law enforcement officers, and it's more attractive for them to come here, he said.
Tax debate shifts focus. Legislature eyes cuts to taxes on business equipment. With a broad proposal for income and property tax reduction locked down in the legislature by a successful filibuster, attention turned Tuesday to proposed reduction or repeal of personal property taxes applied essentially to business machinery and equipment. Those taxes impede investment, productivity, and job creation, participants in a Platt Institute legislative forum said. Nebraska's personal property taxes are some of the highest in the region, Scott Drenkard, director of the state projects at the Tax Foundation, told an audience that included a large number of state senators. And that has a negative impact on Nebraska's rate of economic growth, he said. Drinkard suggested that senators could consider exempting new property that fits the current definition of personal property, enacting a local option provision that leaves those taxing decisions to the counties, or simply decide to repeal the tax. Personal property taxes represent 5.6%, or $217 million, of the total property taxes collected statewide. Rural Nebraskans pay the most on a per capita basis. Senator Jim Smith, the Papillion, chairman of the legislature's Revenue Committee, and Senator Kurt Friesen of Henderson, vice chairman of the committee, quickly ruled out the local option suggestion during an ensuing panel discussion. Smith said elimination or reduction of the tax would spark investment of capital, business expansion, and job creation. Both senators pointed to replacements of the lost revenue as the biggest obstacle to overcome. To the next page. Property taxes represent the biggest tax challenges in Nebraska, especially in rural areas, Friesen said. Imposition of the current personal property tax means that farmers and rural businesses are punished in a way for trying to become more efficient and be better for the environment, he said. Smith said he sees potential for legislative agreement on personal property tax reform. We need to improve the business climate in the state, he said. We need to do something that bridges the divide between rural and urban Nebraska. Friesen said the biggest challenge is how to fund K through 12 education, which now is funded primarily by local property taxes. Following the forum, Smith said he is continuing to meet with Governor Pete Ricketts to consider changes in the big tax reform bill that currently is trapped on the floor of the legislature by a filibuster. Supporters fell 6 senators short of acquiring the 33 votes that were needed to break the filibuster last spring. The legislature will reconvene in January. The governor and I continue to have conversations and looking for a way forward, Smith said. We have not settled on anything specific so far. Smith said he will sit down with Ricketts again next week. Ricketts opened the Platt Institute Forum, pointing to his #1 priority to control the state budget and taxes. That is critical for us to remain competitive in attracting companies to the state and creating new jobs, the governor said.
All right. This next story is really kind of sports related, but it's pretty big to Nebraska, so I'm going to go ahead and do this now. Last week we heard that the University of Nebraska had fired the athletic director Sean Eichhorst, and yesterday they announced the hiring of a athletic director. A homegrown football legend will be the steward of Nebraska athletics while the university conducts a search for a permanent athletic director. That search is expected to move quickly, said University of Nebraska-Lincoln Chancellor Ronnie Green, who introduced Dave Remington as interim athletic director on Tuesday. Remington signed on for up to 60 days to oversee the university's athletic department, which was left rudderless by the Thursday firing of previous AD Sean Eichhorst, who held the position for nearly 5 years. Nebraska plans to be as competitive in finding the right leader as it wants its 22 sports teams to be in their respective fields, Green said. We will be aggressive in the search, both in terms of getting the right leader and the resources required for that, as well as in time, Green said. We expect this to be a short search, where we hope to do that as quickly as possible. But we will take as long as it takes to get the right leader in place. Green said Remington was the first person he thought of to serve as interim AD, both for his standard of excellence at Nebraska. He was a 2-time academic All-American in the 1980s and the only 2-time Outland Trophy winner in the award's existence of recognizing the nation's top interior linemen, and also his success as president of the Boomer Esiason Foundation, which has raised more than $100 million for cystic fibrosis research and treatment. Considered among the best centers in college football history, Remington will be paid $50,000 for each 30 days of his work as interim AD. The span could go as long as November 25th, which marks the day after Nebraska's regular season football finale against Iowa. The 57-year-old said he is not a candidate for the permanent position and plans to return to his charity work, as well as to his wife, Lisa, and 4 children in New York City, before retiring from the foundation at age 60. During his brief tenure, he said he wants to improve conditions in the walk-on program and the university's relationships with former players, as well as has some influence in the selection of a permanent AD. If I can accomplish things, I'll think I'll be pretty happy, Remington said. Green said updates on the quest for the appropriate AD will come at appropriate times. He said he will be working with a search firm and has been working since the middle of last week on framing the process. Also Tuesday, Green said Nebraska would craft a search committee of university leadership, former Husker athletes and representatives of the athletic staff, and also have an advisory group that would provide input. The chancellor said he cold called Remington last Thursday about the position, and the men met last weekend. Green texted Remington an hour before that 8:30 a.m. meeting that he need not wear a suit and that the conversation would have a more casual tone. When Remington received the message, he had already arrived 15 minutes earlier in full dress because he was so excited to talk about the job. "Hey, I'm a Nebraska kid," said Remington, who graduated from Omaha South High School. "I'm going to show up early all the time, especially a lineman Nebraska kid." Green said the easiest thing to do would have been to tap one of the Nebraska's current senior leaders, ones he called amongst the best in the country for the interim job. But he didn't want to miss the chance to bring in an outside person during this time to also work with us and provide some outside input for us as we decided to move forward. The press conference ended with Remington joking, "That would not be a pretty sight," when asked if he would serve as interim center for Nebraska's game at Illinois on Friday. But the College Football Hall of Fame inductee was dominant in his time, finishing 5th in the 1982 Heisman Trophy race and sweeping the Outland Trophy and Lombardi Awards the same year. Number 50 is also one of 17 Huskers to have their jerseys retired. So iconic was he at his position that the Remington Award is named in his honor to annually recognize top centers at multiple levels of college football. Remington went on to be a first-round pick of the Cincinnati Bengals in 1983, and he played 7 NFL seasons. Coach Mike Riley praised the interim hire during his weekly teleconference. "Dave is a perfect guy that cares so much about this place," Riley said. "Obviously, he had a storied career here and has a background in administrative duties. And I think that for this moment, it's a very good choice." So we wish him well.
I remember the controversy with Remington was that he got off the ball so fast that the other team thought he was offside.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to move on to the obituaries, and I'll begin with the Lincoln Journal-Star obituaries. Bartlett, Betty Ann Bartlett, age 90, formerly of Lincoln. Graveside interment services for both Betty and Chick, must have missed something in there, will be held at 11 a.m. Saturday, September 30th at Lincoln Memorial Cemetery. Military honors will be accorded to Chick for his distinguished service in France and England in World War II. Memorials may be made in Betty's name to a charity of the donor's choice. Bauer, Louise Emily Schaefer Bauer, of Lincoln. She was 85 years old. Visitation will be from 4 to 8 p.m. on Friday, September 29th at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home in Lincoln. Funeral service will be held at 10 a.m. on Saturday, September 30th at Redeemer Lutheran Church, In lieu of flowers, please make memorials to Redeemer Lutheran Church. And Bain, David M. Bain, 66. Memorial service will be held 11 a.m. Saturday, September 30th at the Messiah Lutheran Church. Roper and Sons Funeral Home is handling the services. Valjean, R. Carpenter Valjean, age 85 of Bellevue. No other information is given. Dorothy M. Doling, age 86. No other information is given. Erickson, Grace G. Erickson, no age is given. Memorial visitation from 5 to 7 p.m. Wednesday, September 27th at John A. Gentleman Mortuaries, Pacific Street Chapel. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Lutheran Family Services, John A. Gentleman Mortuaries, Pacific Street Chapel in Omaha. Hurd, Marcia Lynn Holmquist Hurd, age 65. The memorial service will be held at 11 a.m. on Friday, September 29th at Lincoln Memorial. Klopp, Alice Diane Klopp, of age 64. The cremation was made and no services are pending. Lair, Doris Marie Lair, age 97 of York. Funeral will be held 10 a.m. Thursday, September 28th at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in York. Visitation from 1 to 8 p.m. with family greeting from 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, September 27th at the mortuary, Metz Mortuary in York. Luxinger, Delelis D. Luxinger, age 84, of Omaha, formerly of Columbus. A memorial service will be held at 11 a.m. on Friday, September 29th at Gass Haney Funeral Home in Columbus. Memorials may be directed to the American Cancer Society or to the family's choice. Luft, Evelyn M. Luft, age 92. Services 11 a.m. Friday, September 29th at Butherus, Macer and Love Funeral Home. Viewing from 9 to 9 Thursday at the funeral home. Burial in the Lincoln Memorial Park. Memorial to St. Gianna's Home or Shrine Transportation Fund. Valdemar, Martins Valdemar, Plattsmouth, he was age 85. No other information is available. Masada, Ted Tarubo Masada, he was a veteran. He was a veteran of the U.S. Navy. Services will be held at 3 p.m. on September 30th at Butherus, Macer and Love Funeral Home in Lincoln. In lieu of flowers, the family requests that donations go to the Alzheimer's Association for research. Nickerson, Jesse Jeanette Nickerson, age 99. Private burial will be held at Lincoln Memorial Park. Memorials to Capital Humane Society Pelock Adoption Center in Lincoln. Oberl, Richard Oberl, age 67 of Falls City. No other information is available. Perkins, John Jack R. Perkins. He was a veteran, 84 of Ashland. Funeral services will be held 10:30 a.m. Friday, 9/29th on September 29th at Marcy Chapel in Ashland. Visitation from 6 to 8 p.m. on Thursday, 9/28 at the Marcy Chapel. Interment with military honors at Ashland Cemetery. Memorials in care of the family for future designation. Reiners, Kenneth J. Reiners, 83 of Kearney. A massive Christian burial will be held at 10:30 a.m. Friday at St. James Catholic Church in Kearney. Memorials are suggested to the Kearney Public School Foundation or St. James Catholic Church. O'Brien Stratman Redinger Funeral Home in Kearney is handling the services. Rogie, David G. Rogie, age 76 of Lincoln. Private family services were held, but burial is in Omaha National Cemetery. No visitation. It was a cremation. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be made to the Lincoln Amateur Radio Club, P.O. Box 5006 in Lincoln, 68505. Roper and Sons is handling the services. Schneider, Jeffrey and Lori Schneider, 53 and 53. Both were 53. Services will be held at 1 p.m. Friday, 9/29 on the September 29th at the Northeast United Church of Christ. Visitation with the family, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Thursday at Butheris, Macer, and Love Funeral Home. Memorials to the family to be decided at a later date. Erna E. Schweitzer, age 101. Graveside services will be at 2 p.m. Friday at Lincoln Memorial Park Cemetery in Lincoln. Crosby, Burkett, Swanson, Golden Colonial Chapel is handling the service. And finally, Shreve, Dorothy F. Shreve, age 91 of Lincoln. Visitation 6 to 8 p.m. Wednesday, September 27th at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Funeral service at 11 a.m. Thursday, September 28th at Christ United Methodist Church in Lincoln. Interment will be in the Lincoln Memorial Park Cemetery. Memorials may be directed to the family for later designation.
Thank you, Rick. We'll now have those obituaries that are listed in today's Omaha World Herald. Astuto, Joseph A. Astuto, age 84. Heafy Hoffman, Dora Cutler, in charge of arrangements. No other details given at this time. Baker, Michael Baker, age 66 of Waterloo, Nebraska, a veteran. The Reichmuth Funeral Home is in charge of arrangements. Memorials to the family. Buddha, Alfred J. Buddha, age 99, a veteran. Heafy Hoffman, Dora Cutler, in charge. Clark, Brenda L. Clark, age 67, of Omaha. The Corisco, Larkin, Staskowitz Funeral Home in charge of arrangements. Memorials to the Karen Street Baptist Church. Corrieview, Kenny R. Corrieview, age 74, of Omaha. Heafy Hoffman, Dora Cutler, of Bellevue, in charge of arrangements. Memorials to Alzheimer's Association. Davis, Joy Waco Davis, age 85, of Longwood, Florida. In lieu of flowers, please support Hospice of Yancey County in Burnsville, North Carolina. Fallhaber, Lanny T. Fallhaber, a veteran, age 79, West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home in charge of arrangements. Foster, Harold C. Foster, age 99, a veteran. Memorials can be given to the American Legion Post No. 1 or the Disabled American Veterans General MacArthur Chapter No. 2. No mortuary listed, but a celebration of life service will be held on Saturday, November 4th at Christ Community Church at 404 South 108th Avenue in Omaha. Fram, John E. Fram, age 82, of Herman, Nebraska, a vet. The Mauer Johnson Funeral Home in Lamars, Iowa is in charge of arrangements. Herring, Debbie C. Herring, age 61, of Bellevue, Nebraska. The Cutler O'Neill Meyer Woodring Funeral Home in Council Bluffs, Iowa is handling the arrangements. Memorials to Alzheimer's Association. Hubbard, Jeanette A. Hubbard, age 87, of Omaha. Heafy Hoffman, Dora Cutler, in charge of arrangements. Memorials may be directed to a charity of one's choice. Johnson, Zelma D. Johnson, age 98, of Omaha. Heafy Hoffman, Dora Cutler, in charge. Memorials to Alzheimer's Association. Clabundi, Roberta Dawn Clabundi, age 75, of Omaha. The Severs Sprick Funeral Home in Fort Calhoun, Nebraska, in charge of arrangements. Memorials suggested to the family. Kryachek, Sharon L. Kryachek, age 77, of Omaha. Heafy Hoffman Doric Cutler Funeral Home in charge of arrangements. Memorials to St. Mary Catholic Church in Bellevue, Nebraska. Medellanina, Sebastiano Medellanina, age 87, of Omaha. The Kramer Funeral Home is in charge of arrangements. Memorial contributions to the family. Maldonado, Alfred L. Maldonado, age 85, a Korean War veteran. The Carisco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home in charge of arrangements. Nielsen, Carol A. Nielsen, age 75, of Council Bluffs. The Cutler O'Neill Meyer Woodring Funeral Home is in charge of arrangements. The family will direct memorials. Noah, William F. Noah, age 76, a veteran. John H. Edelman Mortuary is in charge of arrangements. Perry, Conway T. Perry Sr., age 63, of Omaha. Forest Lawn Funeral Home in charge of arrangements. Memorials may be directed to the Perry family. Pesdertz, David M. Pesdertz, age 56, of Aurora, Colorado. Celebration of his life will be held on Thursday, September 28th at 5 to 6:30 p.m. in the Social Hall at St. Joan of Arc Catholic Church in Omaha. Robinson, Sarah B. Robinson, age 36, of Omaha. Heafy Hoffman Doric Cutler in charge of arrangements. Celebration of Life service will be this coming Saturday, September 30th at 10:30 a.m. at the Mortuary's Bel Air Chapel. Seaberg, Dr. John Raymond Seaberg, age 96, of Hastings, Nebraska. The Livingston Butler Volland Funeral Home in Hastings is in charge of arrangements. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be given to Hastings Public Library Foundation and the First United Methodist Church in Hastings. Skradsky, Shirley A. Skradsky, age 86, of Omaha. Heafy Hoffman Doric Cutler in charge of arrangements. Services are pending. Springer, Mary Sue Springer, age 57, of Omaha. The Arbor Cremation Society in charge of arrangements. Memorials to Jack Olo for the benefit of Cyrus Education Fund. Templeton, Jean E. Templeton, age 65, of Omaha. The Brahmin Mortuary in charge of arrangements. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the American Cancer Society. Tibbetts, Galadia A. Tibbetts, age 97, of Omaha. The Carisco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home in charge of arrangements. Memorials to the Handsome Park United Methodist Church in Omaha. Wilson, Clarence Earl Wilson, age 79, an Air Force veteran. an Omaha resident. Johnny Gentleman Mortuaries in charge of arrangements. Memorials to the Omaha Walking Club or Gross Catholic High School. Zuha, Carol J. Zuha, age 77, of Omaha. The Carisco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home in charge of arrangements. That concludes the obituaries from the Omaha World Herald. And as always, listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. And we thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter.
And thank you very much, Jim Carlson, for that. And thank you, Rick Miner, as well, for reading the first hour of today's newspapers. We will be back to both of our fine readers after we take a little break. And the first thing we'd like to do is to present the home delivery meal menus for the listeners who need that. And with the senior home delivery meal menu for today, here is Jane Nielsen.
I don't.
Greetings. This is Jane with Radio Talking Book Service with your Wednesday menu for Meals on Wheels.
You want to go first?
Potato crunch, fish fillet, tartar sauce, cheesy hash browns, country blend vegetables, breadstick with margarine, blueberry muffin square, and 1% milk.
No. Lincoln paper. No, there isn't. So, if you want to go ahead and start, then I'll do a few of the letters here. They, as you know, always have more. Did you see the cartoon for today?
Greetings from Radio Talking Book Service. This is Jane.
Sad, but
I'm here today to share with you a public service announcement for the Bellevue Senior Center. They are presenting a community-wide lasagna dinner fundraiser. It is Friday, October 13th from 4:30 until 8 p.m. Food will be served from 5 to 7 p.m. Raffle drawings will be at 6:30 p.m. and there is a cash bar. The lasagna dinner fundraiser for the Bellevue Senior Center will be held at the Bellevue Firefighters Hall at 2108 Franklin Street in Bellevue, Nebraska. Tickets in advance are $10 for adults and $5 for children under 12. Tickets purchased at the door will be $12 for adults and $5 for children under 12. Tickets are available for purchase at the Bellevue Senior Center, and all proceeds will help the success and continued operation of the Bellevue Senior Center. If you would like more information, please call Kathy at the Senior Center, 402-293-3041. Again, this is for the lasagna dinner fundraiser for the Bellevue Senior Center, Friday, October 13th from 4:30 to 8 at the Bellevue Firefighters Hall. For information, contact Kathy at 402-293-3041.
And thank you very much, Jane Nielsen. Sounds like a very worthy cause indeed. You are listening to the Radio Talking Book Network in Nebraska. We've been proudly serving our blind and visually impaired listeners for 43 years. The Radio Talking Book Network is brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS-FM in Omaha and statewide through the facilities of NET, radio, and television. Now it's time to return to our fine readers over in Studio A for the second hour of reading from today's Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. Here once again are our stars, and let's welcome back Rick Miner and Jim Carlson.
Hello again. This is from a column by Michael Gerson in the Lincoln Journal-Star. Trump further divides us. It is often difficult to determine if Donald Trump's offenses against national unity and presidential dignity are motivated by ignorance or malice. His current crusade against sideline activism at professional football games features both. Protests by players during the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner are misdirected, but their motivations are understandable. African Americans have a natural complex relationship with a country in which 1 out of every 7 human beings was once owned as property and robbed of their labor. A country with a founding promise that bypassed them. In 1852, Frederick Douglass asked how the American slave should respond to the 4th of July. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States. Tough words, at least as challenging as a knee to the ground at a sporting event, and the end of slavery was hardly the end of oppression. We are a country where the reimposition of white supremacy followed the Civil War involved not just segregation and widespread violence, a country in which mass incarceration and heavy-handed police tactics now create a sense that some neighborhoods are occupied by a foreign force, a country in which wealth and opportunity remain in significant part segregated by race. If white Americans can't even feel a hint of this alienation and outrage, it is a fundamental failing of empathy and historical memory. Trump seems ignorant of or indifferent to the unfolding drama of the civil rights movement, of Abraham Lincoln's firm hand signing the Emancipation Proclamation, of African American military heroism in defending the Union, of the stubborn courage displayed by protesters in the front of buses and at segregated lunch counters, of Bloody Sunday on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, repeated in many bloody versions. When the president looks at protesters, he cannot see what they're trying to be. This ignorance is matched by malice. Trump must know that rallying his white base against young African American protesters is feeding racial tension and providing permission for bigotry. He is essentially accusing these athletes of disloyalty, just as he accused Mexicans of being rapists and Muslims of being threats. This is a pattern and habit of division by race, ethnicity, and religion. Stop and consider. This is a sobering historical moment. America has a racial demagogue as president. We play hail to this chief. We stand when he enters the room. We continue to honor an office he so often dishonors. It is appropriate but increasingly difficult. In this case, demagoguery is likely to be effective, in part because protesters have chosen their method poorly. The American flag is not the racist symbol of a racist country. It is the symbol of a country with ideals to its practice. This is the banner under which the 54th Regiment Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry, the first African-American regiment organized in the Civil War, fought the Confederacy. This is the flag that flew over the U.S. Capitol on July 2nd, 1964, when the Civil Rights Act was passed. This is the flag that drapes the coffins of the honored dead on their final homeward trip to a flawed nation still worthy of their sacrifice. Both president and protesters would benefit from reading Douglas' conclusion. While drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions, my spirit is cheered by the obvious tendency of the age. The fiat of the Almighty, let there be light, has not yet spent its force. No abuse, no outrage, whether in taste, sport, or avarice, can now hide itself from the all-pervading light. The president's agenda of division is fully exposed. Faith in the Declaration and in the genius of American institutions remains the proper response under the flag that symbolizes them both.
Thank you, Rick. I'm going to now read letters in the public posts that are in today's Omaha World Herald. This first one is entitled, NU Athletics Needs Ethical Leaders. As a third-generation Nebraskan and an engineering graduate of the University of Nebraska, I am saddened by how far the Nebraska Athletic Department has deteriorated. I am not, however, surprised because, as in business and life in general, leadership matters. In 2003, Harvey Perlman and Steve Peterson demonstrated their lack of integrity by how poorly they treated Frank Solich so they could take the Huskers in a new direction. They certainly did. We have not had a quality program since. My point here is not to recommend the rehiring of Frank Solich, but to remind the new university leadership that character and honesty matter. And without them, you cannot rebuild the type of program we had under coaches Tom Osborne and Frank Solich. The university should apologize for what it did to Solich. Only then can real healing begin. Perlman's behavior has cost the university and its donors millions of dollars for severance pay. It is time to honestly admit our mistake. Lastly, I am humored that Trev Alberts would even be mentioned as a potential candidate for NU's athletic director. Trev handled the destruction of UNO's football and wrestling programs. Doubling down on poor leadership is hardly a solution. The student athletes, coaches, and fans of Nebraska athletics deserve an honest assessment of the past if we are ever to regain the greatness that the department can and will achieve under sound, ethical leadership. That letter written by David L. Sokol of Jackson, Wyoming. The next one is entitled, A Place to Speak Their Minds. What a wonderful experience the Moms March was at the Ralston Arena. It was so refreshing to hear women speak about the positives in this great country. They were able to speak of their love of being mothers, God, and prayer without the repercussions of not being politically correct. I am looking forward to next year's event. Congratulations to the speakers and organizers. This letter written by Pat Janda of Omaha.
From the Lincoln Star editorial board, ride-sharing reform good for Lincoln. When ride-sharing services such as Uber and Lyft popped up across the United States, few, if any, cities had regulations that adequately covered the company's business model. Lincoln was among the many cities that tried placing ride-sharing under existing taxicab requirements, an awkward fit, considering key differences between traditional cabs and ride-sharing. The incongruity placed the city's Uber and Lyft drivers afoul of the law, and all the while their businesses boomed. But instead, pursuing an exemption from the local taxicab rules for Uber and Lyft drivers to allow them to operate legally within city limits. Lincoln's elected officials have found a practical solution that will allow market forces, not ill-fitting regulations, to determine how people choose to get from point A to point B. Mayor Chris Beidler announced the proposed ordinance last week, and the City Council is expected to hold a public hearing on the matter October 2nd. As a move that fosters market competition, better serves Lincoln, and creates a legislative solution in city code, the plan checks off all the boxes for effective reform. Lincoln did its homework in crafting this ordinance. City officials studied the impact of ride-sharing and found that it helped reduce drunken driving and alleviated some congestions downtown. Most importantly, they were satisfied with its impact on improving the safety of passengers and bystanders. Instead of treating people who provide and use ride-sharing as lawbreakers, we decided to step back, make sure our residents were protected, and then take action, Beidler said at the news conference where he introduced the proposal. Uber and Lyft may change the means by which people get rides to their destinations. They certainly compete with the yellow cabs, with which most Lincolnites are familiar, but are by no means their death knell. The Nebraska Public Service Commission notes that ride-sharing's popularity has coincided with a decline in cab rides in Lincoln. At the same time, however, Omaha has reported an increase in cab rides over the identical period. Allowing and promoting market access is a key element to spurring innovation and improving the goods and services received by customers, a lesson Lincoln learned when state regulators opened up its city's taxi market in 2012. Resolving the murky status of those who participate in ride-sharing and enshrining it in the city ordinance are critical steps in a similar direction. By studying and then proactively addressing ride-sharing, though, Admittedly, not for a few years after it burst onto the scene here, Lincoln struck a common sense stance that the council members should approve.
Okay, we now have a series of letters here on the same topic, so I'll cover some of these. First one's entitled, Not What We Should Be Focused On. Why are we giving so much attention to the antics of the NFL players? If they want to disrespect our country, maybe they should not be getting paid at all. There is so much more important news in the world that we need to quit wasting time on what they're doing and focus on what's important. That letter written by Lisa Todd of Papillion. Second one, Trump isn't bringing us together. Puerto Rico is desperate for water, food, gas, and power. Florida was just hit with a hurricane, as was Houston. These areas are in need of attention and commitment from President Donald Trump. But what he does is tweet about football players kneeling instead of standing for the playing of our national anthem before a game. He calls for these players to be fired or for fans to boycott the NFL. I, as well as all military personnel, have fought or are still fighting for the right to kneel or stand for the national anthem. When you tell someone he can't express his opinion on this topic by kneeling, it is a slippery slope to losing your freedom. Trump said before he was elected that he would unite this nation. All he has done is divide it. This is the latest example. That letter written by Dale Rezac of Omaha. Next is entitled, Stand and Make a Difference. I don't particularly like this president telling us what we should do, nor do I like the previous president labeling and belittling me. They're both passionate men who I believe often speak before they think. But to sit or stand, come on, folks, it's our country, the greatest nation on earth. Is it perfect? No. Is everything fixed? No. We've addressed injustices, inequalities, and freedom for over 240 years with amazing progress and continue to do so every day. If you're not going to stand until everything is fixed, then you'll be sitting your whole life. As for me, I will stand hand over my heart and encourage our nation to continue to listen, learn, and grow. So go ahead and sit. I'll stand, then walk to go see where else I can make a difference. That letter written by Donna J. Rush of Bellevue. And finally, this letter is entitled, Kneeling is Legitimate Speech. The American flag and the national anthem are something all Americans have in common. Out to all of us. Martin Luther King to Malcolm X, to Nancy Pelosi, to John McCain, and yes, to Donald Trump. The current protest is not disrespectful to the military. Disrespect for the military was something that was done in Berkeley, California in the 1960s and 70s when college kids spat on soldiers and called them baby killers. What is happening now is not even close. This protest is about unarmed American minorities all over the country being killed by our police forces at an alarming rate. Players on national sports teams have a stage that is being used to bring attention to this serious national issue that should be troubling to us all. Many people are saying that this makes them feel uncomfortable. Well, of course it does. No one wants to admit that we are, to put it politely, not treating everyone the same. I stand or kneel with all of these men and women. If we are the land of the free and the home of the brave, it must be that way for all of us. This letter was written by Randy Solberg, a U.S. Army veteran from Omaha.
And I have two letters to the editor from the Journal Star. More safety is needed at Moore. This August, Moore Middle School opened its doors to students in Southeast Lincoln. It's a beautiful school with amazing amenities. One thing it does not have is a safe route for children to walk to school. Every morning and every afternoon, groups of children wait to cross South 84th Street as cars and trucks travel past at 45 miles per hour and 55 miles per hour 100 feet south of this crossing. Kids on bikes, kids with parents, groups of kids, kids walking alone, all trying to safely traverse this intersection without the aid of a crosswalk, stoplight, or even a flashing yellow school zone designation. The roundabout intersection at 84th Street and Yankee Hill Road offers no solution either. While roundabouts are great for keeping traffic flowing, they're actually problematic for getting kids across the street. You want to travel to stop so that kids can cross the street street coming to and going from school. My children do not attend this school. I do not have anything invested in this school, but I am a parent and human being who does not want to see any child come to harm because of poor traffic planning. Please help these kids out and create a safe route to school before something tragic happens. And that letter was written by Christina Grosshans. And Trump lacks authority on respect. If not for its utter obscenity, Trump's invective toward athletes supposedly disrespecting the American flag by protesting against racial injustice would be the height of irony. A locker room talker with tremendous respect for women dares to pontificate about respect. This is the moral arbiter who likes people who weren't captured and claims to have made a lot of sacrifices for his country by creating jobs and building structures, who suggests that maybe the mother of a fallen soldier wasn't allowed to have anything to say, and who imagines very fine people attending a Nazi rally. His very presence near the flag leaves an ugly stain on it. That letter was written by Kirill Belashenko.
All right. Thanks, Rick. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the living and entertainment section of the Omaha World Herald. I'll start with this story entitled "Holocaust Survivors Strive to Educate." She remembers seeing the Statue of Liberty for the first time. "It was like seeing God, you know," said Lila Lutz, age 86, a Holocaust survivor who will speak at the Omaha Public Library next month. "I was really happy. But then she was terrified. She almost wasn't allowed into America." Lutz was born in a small town in Poland. During World War II, she did forced labor in various ghettos. She and her father were liberated in 1944, but had to wait for years in a displaced persons camp before they secured their visas to the United States. Lutz turned 16 on the trip over. Her father was let into the country, but a misunderstanding landed Lutz on Ellis Island. "I was so looking forward to be in America, and all of a sudden I'm in jail," she said. "They said I needed to go back to Europe." I said, "Europe? I have no one there. They killed all of my relatives." Her cousin, who had lived in America for years, had to post a $500 bail to get her stateside. She lived in Brooklyn about a year, got married, and in 1950 moved to Omaha. "It was a really big disappointment moving to Omaha because I lived in big cities," she said with a laugh. "Omaha at that time was just a little town. It ended at 72nd Street. But I got used to it, and it was all right. I became a citizen in Omaha." Lutz is one of 4 Holocaust speakers the library will host over the next few weeks, in coordination with the Institute for Holocaust Education. The other speakers are Milton M. Kleinberg, Bay Karp, and Kitty Williams. Williams, a 93-year-old woman from Hungary who has lived in Council Bluffs since 1947, said her life's purpose is to tell her story, and it's quite a story. After initially evading capture, Williams and her sisters were taken to Auschwitz. She learned that her father had been murdered after a friend found his coat with a wedding photo of Williams' sister in the pocket while sorting through a pile of clothes. Williams was eventually sent to a work camp where she lived 20 to a room and was forced to make munitions, handling hazardous chemicals without any protection. Conditions were dire, but the detail probably saved her life. When the war was over, she and her 19 roommates stuck together, eventually encountering U.S. troops. Williams later married an American airman, came to America, and moved to Iowa. She's been back to Europe multiple times and has spoken continually about her experiences. You just feel like you don't have much time left, she said. I just hope that my health holds out so that I can keep on talking. I benefit more out of it than the people I'm talking to because I have the satisfaction that they're informed, that they know it really happened. Williams has long said that the Holocaust could happen again if people aren't vigilant. Now, more than ever. I don't like what's happening in this country about the race issue, she said. This is what can really spark it. I wish I could do more about it. I wish that we all would be aware of how important it is to accept everybody because we're all human beings. It is very sad because I know how it started. It started the same as what's happening in this country. When she first came to the U.S. in 1947, she didn't talk about the Holocaust because nobody wanted to talk about it. I was silent for so many years, she said. It's my only regret. But I will try my best to make up for it. So the speakers, Milton M. Kleinberg will speak 6:30 p.m. this coming Thursday at the Elkhorn Library. He and his family were among Jews exiled to Soviet labor camps during World War II and displaced persons camps after the war. Lila Lutz will speak 6:30 p.m. on October 5th at the Benson Library. Bay Carp will speak 6:30 p.m. on October 12th at the main downtown library. She and her family were imprisoned in work camps during the war. And Kitty Williams, she herself will speak at 6:30 p.m. on October 19th at the Swanson Library on 91st in West Dodge.
From the Ask the Doctors column, exercises can help with fibromyalgia. Dear Doctor, my daughter, who is in her 40s, has fibromyalgia. Is there any cure for this painful condition or any natural remedies? I hate to see her suffer. Dear reader, the word suffer perfectly sums up fibromyalgia, and my heart goes out both to your daughter and you, who can see the condition's terrible effect on her, a chronic pain disorder initially termed fibrositis syndrome. In the mid-19th century, fibromyalgia has been an official diagnosis only since 1990. The condition causes widespread musculoskeletal pain and fatigue, as well as sleep problems and difficulties in concentration and with memory. In the United States, 2 to 3% of the population suffers from fibromyalgia, with women affected twice as often as men. Tests can't detect fibromyalgia, so the diagnosis is based on a person's symptoms, including the tender points identified during a physical examination. That said, people with fibromyalgia have shown abnormal biochemical responses to painful stimuli, and these responses can help guide treatment. The first step in treating fibromyalgia is to understand the illness and what triggers a flare of symptoms. Anxiety and depression are common with fibromyalgia, and the resulting emotional stress can create a cycle of worsening pain and even lower energy levels. Let's take a look first at non-medical interventions. Practicing good sleep hygiene is vital because poor sleep can worsen fibromyalgia pain and fatigue and trigger the cycle mentioned above. Relaxation techniques and therapy can relieve anxiety and depression, while meditation training can ease pain. Reflexology and acupuncture have each shown benefits in small studies at easing a variety of symptoms. Exercise is a crucial component of therapy. Multiple studies have shown that it decreases pain, increases flexibility, and boosts energy. Note that if exercise is too vigorous or of a high impact, it may cause a flare of symptoms. The key is to start slowly with low-impact exercises such as walking, biking, swimming, or water aerobics. My computer just shut down. Can you go on to something else, Tim?
I sure can, yes. Well, Rick, did you know that this week is the annual Banned Books Week. And so the World Herald has a story about that. If there's a book you love, one that challenged your ideas and made you see the world in a new way, there's a good chance that someone somewhere at some point tried to censor it. Every year, hundreds of books are formally challenged for removal at schools and public libraries, and for a wide range of reasons: profanity, sexual content, violence, political persuasion. Quite a few of the classics have been challenged. The Catcher in the Rye for its vulgar language, To Kill a Mockingbird for its adult themes, Animal Farm for the supposed communist intent of its author. In a lot of cases, the challenges to the books went unanswered, but in many other cases, books were removed from shelves altogether. Since 1982, Banned Books Week has sought to prevent further censorship. Held the last week of every September, the event celebrates the freedom to read. Its key promoters are the American Library Association and Amnesty International. This week honors famously controversial books as well as recent titles that have drawn the ire of parents, patrons, and school boards across the country. Each year, the American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom receives reports from libraries, schools, and the media on attempts to ban books in the United States. And so the group has and provides a wealth of data on challenged books, including the many incidents in which literary classics were challenged, often successfully, by their communities. We culled from their listings, looking at some of the most notable books banned and why folks sought to silence them. So some classics that were banned or challenged are listed. Catcher in the Rye. It complains that it was obscene and anti-white. It has vulgar language and sexual scenes. So this first occurred in 1960 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and again in 1975 from Selleys Grove, Pennsylvania. 1988, it was challenged in Stockton High School in Linton, Indiana. And 1997 from Marysville, California. And as recent as 2001, it was banned by a school board member in Somerville, South Carolina, because it is a filthy, filthy book. To Kill a Mockingbird. There was complaints about that, the book by Harper Lee. And in 1977, it was banned in Eden Valley, Minnesota, due to the dirty words used in the novel. In 2009, it was removed from a secondary school in Ontario, Canada, after a parent objected to the language. Color Purple was also a book that had been challenged and removed from several places. The Grapes of Wrath, Animal Farm. Kurt Vonnegut's book called Slaughterhouse-Five was actually burned in Drake, North Carolina, banned in schools from Leviton, New York, to North Jackson, Ohio, Lakeland, Florida, schools in Fitzgerald, Georgia. So many school districts objected to it. The Lord of the Flies, and even a book, The Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And that's an old book. Even in 1932 in Ireland, it was banned. And as recent as 2000 in Foley, Alabama. So this is the week. We'll see what happens.
Well, I'm back online again and reading from the Ask Amy column. Eldest sibling wonders about sharing wealth. Dear Amy, I am the oldest, age 62 of 7 children, and I have been financially fortunate. I would like to share my good fortune with my siblings by giving them each an amount of money, but I don't know how to go about doing it. It seems kind of crass to just hand each of them a check. A couple of my siblings really need the money and the rest do not, but I want to give them all an equal amount. How can I do it in a fun way without looking like I'm giving alms to the poor? Lucky sibling. Dear Lucky, it might help you to wrestle with this awesome dilemma if you think of your plan as sharing versus giving. Check with your financial advisor and implement the plan with your and your recipient's tax implications in mind. According to the IRS, in 2017, the limit for tax-exempt gifts to individuals is $14,000, meaning that your siblings can receive a generous cash gift of up to that amount without having to pay taxes on it. No, I don't think you should hand each of your siblings a check. You should keep this simple. Send each of them a note and a check on the same day by secure means. Write something to the effect of, I've been very lucky and feel that part of my good luck is to have you as a sibling. I've reached a phase in my life where I'm happy to share my good fortune with people who mean a lot to me. Please accept this gift. I hope you will use it in whatever way makes you happy. Understanding before you do this that some people are uncomfortable receiving gifts, but they can never reciprocate. Some of your siblings may have an unexpected reaction to it. You might have one or more checks returned to you. You might not receive the acknowledgement or thanks that you feel you deserve. This is the heavy lift of generosity. When you give, you have to also let go. In this case, letting go translates into not only letting go of your assets, but also any expectations attached to your generosity. And dear Amy, this isn't exactly a request for advice, I guess. But computer's not doing well. Really, I just want to hear some wisdom from you, if you have any on this subject. I'm wondering about breakups. I'm an almost 30-year-old woman, and I've been in a handful of serious relationships. Sometimes I end it, and sometimes the other person ends it. I get it that no one probably enjoys ending a relationship, but I seem to take breakups particularly hard. I wonder why this is, and if there are things I can do to avoid feeling this way in the future. Your thoughts? Laying low. Dear Lo, one surefire way to avoid a painful breakup is to avoid a committed love relationship. If you're going to go this route, I suggest that you not only avoid people, but pets too. My point is that any attachment will eventually lead to loss. Sometimes the very concept of attachment gets a bad rap, but I think that attachments to fellow human creatures is something to celebrate as long as you aren't too tethered to a particular outcome. After a breakup, you feel so bad because you feel so much. A breakup usually starts with drama and ends in grief. True grieving involves heartache. Your heart, gut, head actually hurts. No one wants to feel this way. Our human instincts scream out to avoid feeling this way. Some people medicate their way around their grief with alcohol, drugs, and one-night stands. A brave person feels her feelings when she is having them. Understand your own temperament and look for healthy ways to soothe yourself when you feel bad. What works for me is spending time in nature and listening to and making music, reading Mary Oliver, and watching old episodes of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. You might benefit from the wisdom of the Buddhist thinker Pema Chodron. Listen to her lecture, Don't Bite the Hook. And dear Amy, poor upset mother. She was worried because her daughter-in-law decided to spend her 40th birthday with friends instead of with her husband and kids. Boo-hoo, let this woman do what she wants. It's her birthday. Disappointed. Dear disappointed, I can understand why this woman's husbands and kids were upset by her choice to spend her 40th birthday 3,000 miles away, but it was not upset mother's business.
Okay, here's a short story from the World Herald. Billionaire Joe Ricketts believes the sprawling Jesuit retreat center he's building south of Gretna will be a wonder of the world. And that's in part thanks to a group of sculptors from around the country who've spent 2 years crafting about 60 7-foot-tall figures for a massive Stations of the Crosswalk at the center. Ricketts told a group of Nebraska Historical Society and Foundation members and guests at a private event in Lincoln on Monday. Ricketts, along with one of the sculptors, Nebraska native George London, spoke to about 100 at the International Quilt Study Center and Museum. It's one of the first times Ricketts, who founded Omaha's TD Ameritrade and is the father of Governor Pete Ricketts, has addressed a group publicly about his pricey passion project, the Cloisters on the Platte. The 931-acre retreat center off Nebraska Highway 31 and Fishery Road will cost at least $20 million, according to building permits filed with Sarpy County. The land cost Ricketts an additional $13.6 million in 2014. He has declined to offer a total cost for the whole undertaking. It's on track to open in summer of 2018, Ricketts told the group, and he thinks it's poised to become a national and international tourist destination, thanks to the Stations of the Cross walk. Retreats will run on weekends, but the Stations of the Cross will be open to the public Monday through Thursday, he said. It's such a unique situation, London said, and we're so blessed to be part of it. It's been a wonderful experience so far, and it isn't over yet. And then some history. So on this day in history, in the year 1540, Pope Paul III issued a papal bull establishing the Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, as a religious order. 1779, John Adams was named by Congress to negotiate the Revolutionary War's peace terms with Britain. In 1854, the first great disaster involving an Atlantic Ocean passenger vessel occurred when the steamship, the Arctic, sank off Newfoundland. Of the more than 400 people on board, only 86 survived. 1939, Warsaw, Poland surrendered after weeks of resistance to invading forces from Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union during World War II. In 1954, The Tonight Show, hosted by Steve Allen, made its network debut on NBC TV. 1962, Silent Spring. Rachel Carson's study on the effects of pesticides on the environment was published in book form by Houghton Mifflin. And in 1991, President George H.W. Bush announced in a nationally broadcast address that he was eliminating all U.S. battlefield nuclear weapons and called on the Soviet Union to match the gesture. So that's what happened on this day in history. Right.
In business news, senior care costs surging. Long-term care costs are on the rise. It will soon cost six figures to live in a private room in a nursing home. Genworth Financial released its annual survey of long-term care costs Tuesday, which showed nursing home residents living in a private room in Lincoln pay nearly $98,000 on average, a 7% increase over last year and slightly higher than the national average of $97,411. That was by far the most expensive of all long-term care options in Lincoln, although it wasn't the one with the biggest cost increase. That distinction went to adult day health care services, which rose 13%. A semi-private room in a nursing home costs more than $87,000, up 5% from last year, while a private one-bedroom unit in an assisted living facility costs just over $48,000, up 1%. Costs for in-home services, such as a home health aide, remain steady, according to the survey. Statewide nursing home and assisted living costs were generally lower than in Lincoln, while adult day health care and home health care rates were higher. Genworth said growing labor expenses and sicker patients helped push the median cost of long-term care up an average of 4.5% nationally this year. That's the second highest increase since Genworth started its survey in 2004. Many Americans don't plan for these expenses or understand them until they face them, said Joel Caldwell at the National Council on Aging, which is not tied to the study. People don't like to think about it and talk about it ahead of time, so they kind of put off planning and saving for it financially because they don't think it's going to happen to them, he said. Long-term care can impose a crushing financial burden on individuals or families, in part because Medicare, the federal health coverage program for people over age 65, provides limited help that can force people coverage to spend down their assets until they qualify for the government's health insurance program for the poor, or Medicaid. Genworth sells long-term care coverage and didn't address that cost in its study, which was based on information from 15,000 long-term care providers. Coverage costs are rising as well, Caldwell said, noting that few employers offer help with that expense like they do with more common forms of coverage, such as health insurance.
Wow, that's just scary, isn't it?
It is terribly scary,
Wow.
especially since I have a 90-year-old mother.
Yes, exactly. Okay, here's a little story in the World Herald about Omaha tourism. More than 12.3 million people visited the city of Omaha last year, and they brought with them nearly $2 billion in economic impact, the city's tourism agency said Tuesday. The visitors, up 4% from 2014, spent $1.2 billion while visiting the city, according to the Omaha Convention and Visitors Bureau. The spending by visitors resulted in additional spending by local businesses of another $700 million in 2016. The figures were compiled by Tourism Economics, which is a division of Oxford Economics of the UK. According to the report, 1 in 17 jobs in the Omaha area is supported by spending from visitors. We want people to understand that these numbers actually affect each and every one of us, from jobs to taxes, said Keith Baxson, executive director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, which also is known as Visit Omaha, and is the agency that markets the city and Douglas County. Tourism spending helps fill local and state coffers too. That money saves each Douglas County household $730 a year, the report says. Of every dollar spent in Omaha, the Oxford report says the following is spent in the 5 main categories. Food and beverage, $304 million, or 24.8% of the total. Retail, $302 million, or 24.6%. Hotels, $242 million, or 19.7%. Transportation, $190 million, or 15.5%. And recreation, $189 million, or 15.4% of the totals. That's good news for the city of Omaha.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's time to move on to sports. The Huskers kept the running game simple. Kavanaugh pleased with how the O-line responded. Football can seem exceptionally complex at times. In other cases, well, not so much. We ran that one play 31 times. That was a record, said Nebraska offensive line coach Mike Kavanaugh, referring to a certain run play the Huskers used Saturday in their 27-17 win against Rutgers. Led by junior Divine Ozigbo, Nebraska finished with 197 rushing yards on 47 carries out of 73 plays total. Ozigbo rushed 24 times for 101 yards. Wilbon rushed for 14 times for 78. Kavanaugh was pleased with how well his group responded to a dispiriting performance the previous weekend and lost to Northern Illinois. The Huskers regrouped against Rutgers, leaning hard on a run play called Duo, Kavanaugh said. It's basically a power play, he said. It was good. The guys did a good job. They were physical. They just kept grinding. Kavanaugh's crew pushed through without 3 injured linemen, center Cole Conrad and right tackles David Knievel and Matt Farniak. Sophomore Michael Decker earned praise from coaches for his work in place of Conrad, while true freshman Brendan James received good reviews for his play at right tackle. Pull up the story on the next page. Left tackle Nick Gates had left guard Gerald Foster playing particularly well, Kavanaugh said, and right guard Tanner Farmer was solid. The line took a liking to Duo, the power run play. Nebraska's head coach Mike Riley chuckled when asked about it Tuesday, saying the Huskers disguised the play well by using different personnel groups. Sometimes there was a little bit of window dressing. It wasn't always the same personnel group, he said. It might appear different to the defense. One time it's with the fullback in the backfield and one time with the H-back. Riley said such an occurrence running a certain play 31 times isn't necessarily an extreme oddity. He said there have been times in his career when he used only 3 different run plays in a game. There's a benefit to that, and there's a danger. You have to have a curveball to offset the repetitive play. But the benefit is players get used to blocking it, and the runner sees it. Nebraska found a groove in the running game 1 week after mustering only 85 yards on 36 carries against Northern Illinois. Kavanaugh said he and his players owned up to that performance. In the weeks leading to Rutgers game, Kavanaugh noticed a different look in his linemen's eyes. They were ready to go, the coach said. Said Riley, I was impressed with the mentality of that group going into the game. That group stayed pretty quiet all week, and I really didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that meant. Wow, these guys are beat, or they're going to come out fighting. They came out fighting, and they did it with a couple of new faces in there, which is impressive. They stayed with it in a good recipe for a win. The part they played was very good as far as what this team can look like. Riley wants to see Nebraska build off the performance with an improved passing attack, which would help lead the balance he desires on offense. Kavanaugh wasn't ready to say who would be the starting lineup once Conrad, Knievel, and Farniok are able to return to action. In fact, the coach sounded confident and pushing forward with Decker and James if necessary. Nothing's automatic in life. Well, I remember when back in the 90s, the quarterback ran up to the line and just said, we're going left or we're going right, and nobody could stop him.
Yes, those times have changed. So yesterday, federal prosecutors made a big announcement about bribery and fraud charges involving various colleges and basketball programs and other groups. And while neither Nebraska nor Creighton were contacted or involved in any way, it certainly has a big news coming forward in the sports world. And so here's some details about it in today's World Herald about this college basketball scandal. So the question was, what was revealed Tuesday? Well, 4 college assistants receiving $1,000 bribes for their efforts used their influence to steer or pressure players into joining specific sports agencies and financial management companies. Additionally, 3 recruits were promised upwards of $150,000, initially supplied by Adidas employees before getting rerouted to third-party individuals in exchange for their commitment to schools and their eventual partnerships with those same professionals. So it's not a good look for college basketball. Hotel room meetings allegedly took place in cities like Las Vegas and New York, in season and out of season. Those involved were adamant about keeping their dealings under the table. In one instance, a coach told a player to inform only his mom and stepdad, not even his sisters. According to court documents, one of the individuals charged in the scandal was quoted as saying, if you're going to fund those kinds of guys, man, I mean, like we'd be running college basketball. And one of the assistant coaches said, I definitely can get the players and I can definitely mold the players and put them in the lap of you guys. So which college programs are implicated? 4 assistant coaches were arrested. Auburn University's Chuck Person, Oklahoma State's Lamont Evans, Arizona's Emmanuel Richardson, and USC's Tony Bland. 3 other programs, University of Louisville, Miami, and South Carolina were also implicated. What role did the NCAA play? None. The NCAA was informed of the FBI investigation on Tuesday. The NCAA Committee on Infractions will surely open its own inquiries at some point, using the findings released Tuesday as a starting point. How did this FBI investigation begin? Martin Blazer, a Pittsburgh-based financial advisor, was accused by the Securities and Exchange Commission of taking money from clients. He began cooperating with officials 3 years ago. The FBI probe into a college basketball corruption scheme with Blazer as an informant began in 2015. So why is the FBI involved? According to U.S. Attorney June Kim, it's illegal for employees of a university receiving federal funds to accept bribes. He indicated the individuals involved knowingly misled players and schools. Charges of money laundering, wire fraud, and the solicitation of bribes and gratuities were among the allegations. How big of a deal is this? It's huge. Those arrested face possible jail time, and many believe it is already the most comprehensive crackdown on improper dealings in college hoops. 4 teams have lost assistant coaches. A major sports management company, ASM Sports, has reportedly been raided, and this appears to be just the tip of the iceberg. So what's next? The FBI will continue to investigate. Who knows what it'll uncover? There are plenty of people who have lots to lose, and they could turn on anyone to avoid prison. Kim encouraged coaches with knowledge of potential illegal practices to contact authorities. It's better for you to call us than to be calling on you, he said. So that'd be interesting to see how that all plays out as time goes by.
In NFL notes, the NFL is trying not to react to Trump. No matter what challenges his administration faces, President Donald Trump is keeping up his running commentary on the NFL. Tweeting Tuesday about the Football League's TV ratings and suggesting to bar players from kneeling during the national anthem. The NFL, for its part, was not all that eager to continue the back and forth with Trump. He's exercising his freedom to speak, league spokesman John Lockhart said on a conference call with reporters, and I'm exercising my freedom not to react. Trump brought up the topic for the 5th day in a row, dating to a speech to a crowd of supporters in Alabama on Friday night when he referred to an NFL player making a gesture during the Star-Spangled Banner as a son of a bitch. In response, more than 200 players knelt or sat on a bench and took other actions during the anthems at games Sunday. Among the president's tweets Tuesday, ratings for NFL football are way down except before a game starts, when people tune in to see whether or not our country will be disrespected. The ratings for Monday's Cowboys-Cardinals games were up 63% from the equivalent game a year ago, which went up against a presidential debate between Trump and Hillary Clinton. The ratings for week 3 of the NFL season were 3% higher than the same week last season. But viewership for national telecasts of NFL games is down 11% this season compared with 2016 through 3 weeks, according to the Nielsen Company. That figure does not include Monday's game. And Panther players meet with the owner. The Panthers say team captains and other selected players met with owner Jerry Richardson at his home in Charlotte, North Carolina, Tuesday to discuss social issues affecting the league and solutions moving forward. Carolina spokesman Stephen Drummond said the conversations between the players and owner will remain private. Richardson was one of the last NFL owners to release a statement in response to comments made by President Trump on Twitter regarding NFL players. Chiefs put kicker Santos on the injured reserve list. The Kansas City Chiefs have placed kicker Cairo Santos on injured reserve and claimed rookie kicker Harrison Butker off the Carolina Panthers practice squad. The moves were made Tuesday. The Chiefs did not say whether Santos would be designated to return his season. He would need to remain on IR for at least 6 weeks, then have 2 weeks to return to the roster. Santos was hit on a field goal attempt in Sunday's victory over the Chargers, drawing a personal foul penalty. The Giants owner unhappy with Beckham. The New York Giants say they will internally handle Odell Beckham Jr.'s embarrassing post-touchdown celebration. Co-owner John Mara said in an email Tuesday that he was unhappy with Beckham's behavior Sunday in Philadelphia. The dynamic wide receiver pretended to urinate like a dog after catching a fourth quarter touchdown in the Giants' 27-24 loss to the Eagles. He was penalized for unsportsmanlike conduct. The NFL probably will fine him. And finally, Rams defensive lineman Wes Brooks arrested with stolen gun. Los Angeles Rams defensive lineman Ethan Westbrooks was arrested after an officer saw a stolen gun in his car when he was pulled over for speeding, the California Highway Patrol said Tuesday. Westbrooks was arrested Friday on suspicion of possessing a loaded firearm, possessing a stolen firearm, and possessing a high-capacity magazine, said Sergeant Chris Carr. Jim?
Wow, okay. Hey, last night was a big night for college soccer in the city of Omaha. At Caniglia Field at UNO, approximately 5,000 people turned out to watch number 24 ranked UNO take on number 25 ranked Creighton University for a soccer game. It turned out to be quite a game. It went down to the end. Creighton did prevail with 1 goal, and they won 1-0. But apparently quite an electric type atmosphere with the fans. There were so many people trying to get into the game even as it started that the athletic director for UNO just said, hey, we're just going to open the gates. Everybody can go in without tickets instead of having them wait to try and get one. So quite a scene, and that's great news for college soccer in this city. In Major League Baseball, the season is quickly winding down. Just a handful of games remaining for most of the teams. The wild card race is still active, and so the 2 teams with the best records that don't win their division in each the American and National League will get to play a wild card game. And currently in the American League, the New York Yankees are tied with Minnesota Twins for the best record. Los Angeles Angels are 5 games back of those 2, so it's unlikely they'll make it. The Kansas City Royals, who had high hopes for this season, are now eliminated after Minnesota won yesterday. In the National League, Arizona and Colorado are both tied for the 2 wild card berths, with the Milwaukee Brewers just 1.5 games back of those 2. So they still have a chance, I guess, to prevail. But season's winding down, and
It is.
the playoffs will start in just a week, and we'll see what happens. So that's all I have here.
Well, this is Rick Miner wishing you a good week, and go Yankees.
This has been Jim Carlson reading to you today with the Omaha World Herald. Thank you, Rick, and we hope everyone has just a joyous day and enjoy this nice weather.
Miner, thank you, Jim Carlson.
Well, it was nice working with you.
Absolutely, it's fun. Yeah.
Get a chance to get out and do it. How often do you get a chance to do this?
Please have a
Not
great
very
week.
often.
Enjoy some of this
Sybil will
nice
call
weather.
me once in a while, and usually it's on
This
day
comes
that
from each and every one of us
Busy.
here at the
Yeah.
Radio Talking Book
driving
Network.
or
You are
something.
tuned to the Radio
So,
Talking Book Network in
I
Nebraska. We've been very
like to do it more than I
our
get
blind
to.
and visually impaired listeners for 40
Yeah, I seldom have the
years.
same
The Radio
person
Talking
come.
Book Network is
Yeah,
brought
it's
to
always
you with the
been somebody
cooperation
else.
of KIOS-FM in Omaha
We don't
and
say.
statewide through the
Well, I told her I'm usually available on Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. Well, there we go.
Maybe we'll get a chance again.
It's just Paul travels a lot.
Oh, does he?
He's got kids all over the country, so
Oh.
he's gone home. You know.
Okay. Well, remind Sybil of that.
I will.
All right.
Go Yankees.
Boo,
The Yankees
yeah.
fans since 1956. I was in the 2nd grade.
Yeah, they beat the Royals on Monday, 11-3. I was some of that game. Yeah.
They are. That's right.
That's true.
Pay for what you get.
Yeah.